Good afternoon. Welcome back to Public Wisdom, True Reliable News with your host, Elizabeth Caldwell. And today on Surrender or Reassign, we are going to talk about UPS may soon allow handgun shipments. Today's top story centers on a major policy shift that can reshape how firearms move through the United States. For the first time in nearly a century, the U.S. Postal Service may soon allow everyday citizens, not just licensed gun dealers, to ship handguns through the mail. This change stems from a proposed rule introduced under the Trump administration, and it's generating strong reactions on both sides. For context, since 1927, federal law has prohibited the USPS from mailing concealable weapons, firearms, unless the sender is a licensed dealer or manufacturer. Long guns, like rifles and shotguns, can be mailed today, but only if they're unloaded and securely packaged. That long-lasting restriction was challenged earlier this year when the Department of Justice issued a memo arguing that the ban violates the Second Amendment. The DOJ's position is that if Congress chooses to operate a national parcel service, it cannot refuse to ship firearms that citizens are constitutionally allowed to own. In other words, the government can't run a mail system and simultaneously block the shipment of legal weapons between law-abiding citizens. Opinion: maybe it's a good time to privatize the U.S. Postal Office, as they've been suggesting lately. Following that memo, the USPS proposed a new rule in April that would extend the same mailing protections currently applied to long guns to handguns, meaning pistols and revolvers could be mailed as long as they are unloaded, properly packaged, and shipped according to safety guidelines. Now, there are limits. Under the proposed rule, a person could ship a handgun within their own state. Shipping across state lines would only be allowed if someone mails the gun to themselves. Sort of like getting your own copyright, huh? That's a narrow exception designed to avoid interstate sales through the mail. Reactions have been intense. Gun safety advocates, including Everytown for Gun Safety, argue that this change could turn the Postal Service into what they call, quote, gun trafficking pipeline, unquote. They warn that allowing licensed individuals to mail handguns could make it easier, for felons, abusers, or straw purchasers to move illegal weapons without detection, and harder for law enforcement to track firearm movement. On the other side, gun rights supporters, including the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action, are applauding the proposal. They call it long overdue correction to what they see as an arbitrary restriction that has unfairly limited gun owners for nearly a century. They argue that law-abiding citizens should have the same mailing rights for handguns that they already have for long guns. Opinion: will that increase presidential assassinations? End of opinion. It is also worth noting how this compares to private carriers, UPS and FedEx. Both restrict firearm shipments to people who hold federal firearms licenses. Importers, manufacturers, dealers, and collectors. UPS also bans the shipment of automatic weapons entirely and prohibits international firearm shipments. FedEx requires licensed shippers to work with an account executive before sending any firearm. So if the USPS rule is approved, it would become the most accessible shipping option for handgun owners. This proposal change touches on constitutional questions, public safety concerns, and the practical realities of how firearms move around the country. It is a debate that blends legal interpretation with real-world implication, and it's one we'll continue to follow as the USPS reviews public feedback and decides whether to finalize the rule. Thank you very much for living. Have a great weekend.